Good morning. Welcome back to another social media mastermind group. I'm Kyle. I have a new title.
How do you do?
Content director. Yes, thank you. Thanks for the promotion. I'm content director here at 98 Central. This is Jen, COO, brand director, also writer. What else can we throw on the?
I don't know.
Thanks, guys, for joining us again today. I'm super excited about this session because it's just the result of like a lot of years of doing something the wrong way. So I'm hoping that we can like nip things in the bud for everyone here too. So welcome back again. We have Hannah who's off screen screening all of our any questions, any comments as they come in. So put them in there. She'll get them to us. We'll answer anything that you put in there. And then we have our technical crew, Nicole and Zach, who helped set everything up, got everything running smooth. We have slides this time. If you remember from last time, we had some issues, so we're all good this time. Before we talk about our agenda, I want to do something a little bit different and talk about like wins. Let's have some sort of back and forth aside from the Q&A, which the Q&A is the best part. So I was thinking like maybe we start this off by talking about like the wins that we've had since our last mastermind group, which was over a month ago. I came up with a prompt. I can't think of anything. No, we have a ton of wins. We've added a good amount of new clients. We've reached a lot of like internal goals.
Yeah.
Figured out a lot of really hard problems. We had a client join 2 weeks ago and already has like a keynote piece going out for them this week before we even start their social engagement, which is
pretty great.
Massive,
so
massive
that was probably like the biggest win, was making that all come together and getting that out the door
Yeah.
and learning so much about their business in such a compressed amount of time.
Right.
It just felt really good.
Yeah. Was that your win too?
Yeah.
Okay. Love to hear from anyone who is. I can't see any of the participants, so I'm kind of flying blind. But anyone in there who wants to turn their camera on or put it into the chat here. Let's talk about some wins, guys. What are some things that you have accomplished this last month that maybe you need to take some time to review and give yourself a pat on the back.
This is one I wish we could like just start playing music.
I
Like,
know. The Jeopardy thing.
Well, that or like some like elevator music. I don't know.
Some music.
Okay, I'll share.
You're
hear
on.
me?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, awesome. That's exciting. No, so this isn't since the last month, but I wasn't here last month. So a couple of things that we've done since we started this series with you guys is we did launch our own Instagram channel, which has been fun and creative and different for us in a B2B space. The other thing is doing more story type posting on both Facebook, our existing, and then having that outlet on Instagram. It's been great for us in realizing that so our kind of standard content that we put out as posts still has to be more B2B, more serious. Stories have given us a lot of flexibility with being able to share things that are more fun, more C-level personality. So it's not necessarily the thing that we want people to always see when they come to our Facebook page for the first time or whatever social media it may be. But when it's an engaged audience already, it's definitely been like great to be able to show, hey, this is what we're doing for breast cancer awareness, or this is like we all got caramel apples yesterday for Halloween because that's what we do at C-level. So that's been really fun and exciting. We also took advantage of the template that you guys shared for reporting and have been backfilling that with some data and suggestions. So that's been super helpful. So that's kind of what's happening in our social media space right now.
That is awesome.
That is really great. Yeah.
That's a lot of wins. Those are a lot of good things.
It's been good.
Yeah. That's awesome to hear too.
The thing that I like about that too is, yes, you're focused on B2B and that's where a lot of energy needs to go. But what I love about sharing the kind of off the cuff stuff is that it really helps with culture. It really helps with recruiting. It really helps with kind of the other side that's still just as important and sometimes can feel more important when you need to hire people and get people in the door. And so it just kind of helps to build that digital footprint of like, look how awesome of a place this is to be. Don't you want to be here too?
Yeah.
And you guys specifically have such a fun voice. Like we get to do some really cool things with you. So it's cool to see that like live out in different ways too. So that is awesome. It's always kind of a freaky thing, like especially with B2B to be like, oh, we're gonna be more, I don't know, personality.
It's
like
real people. It's gonna be great. But no, it's been so good, and just having kind of that dedicated outlet and space to be able to do that in a creative way without diminishing anything from our overall brand. It's
Yeah.
been really fun.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Love
to hear.
it.
Yeah, thanks
That's
for
a
sharing
great
that.
one.
That's cool. Okay, that was great. All right, let's roll into this session. So the things we're going to cover today. So overarching theme of this is what we kind of call the 4-step social plan. So we're going to talk about basically just planning at a base level, what our old social plans used to look like. I shudder to think about it. What we've learned from it. We're going to take a step back and talk about strategy, talk about planning, talk about tactics. We're going to walk through that 4-step plan. We're going to walk through what to do after that, and then we're going to give you a little bit of a preview, a little sneak peek for session 7, which will be really fun. So Jen's going to take it away and talk about some planning.
Yeah. Probably one of the biggest things that we can talk about here is like where to start and how this needs to look. And I think the biggest thing to know is that a social plan doesn't necessarily need to be a mile-high stack of papers. And Kyle mentioned something about our old social plans that we used to do. And I do feel like we've worked together long enough, and we've kind of evolved this process and learned as we go, and we made plenty of mistakes, but previously our social plans used to look pretty much like that. And they had to include competitive analysis. They had to include different types of post topics and types of posts to put out there already. We had to do a full social media audit, not just for the potential client, but also of all of their competitors. We had to do really intense platform breakdowns, different kind of KPIs that we should be going for, and justifications for them. And it took probably 16 hours to put one of those out. We actually had it timed. It was a long process. And I remember at some point we had one of the leadership members in the company at the time say, because I think I went to her and I said, this is just too much. We can't be doing things this way. And she said, oh no, this is good. You want to be able to take this thick stack of papers and dump it on a client and say, look at all this work, look at everything that we've done. And in a way it just proved, I guess, effort or proved thought. Yeah. But there were times when you would just see clients' eyes get kind of big and be like, what are we here? You see their eyes glaze over in a meeting and you realize, old social plans really stink and there's a better way to be doing them.
Yeah. We learned a lot that way. Mm-hmm. And so I'll go back to this with all the things that were in the old social plan. And these are all good things to do as part of your research and, your growth process in social. They don't need to be a part of your plan. It's I'm not gonna say it's wasted time and energy, but actually, maybe it is. It was just a lot of time, especially at where we were, where everything was every minute that wasn't spent on client work was other client work was a minute we couldn't get back. It was just a lot of it's a lot of effort. It's also a lot to sift through. It's a lot of information for us to bring to clients, and they're just looking at us like, what in the world is this? You just printed out an encyclopedia for me. What do I do with it?
How do we distill it? How do we actually make something actionable out of it?
So what we have kind of created, through years of doing it, maybe the wrong or inefficient way, is a really simple version of it. And I think this plays not even if it's a client, like an agency-client relationship, but also if you're on an internal social team and you have higher-ups and they ask for a social plan, this is still a great thing to keep in mind. Do they need to know all of the research and information that goes into the plan, or is it the best use of their time just to know those really high-level notes? So before we dive into that 4-step social plan, I wanted to kind of reel it back a little bit to talk about strategy a little bit more, and it's more of just to clarify and define all of the terms that we use here. And there's kind of, when we talk about strategy, taking a strategy like this ambiguous thing and turning it into the actual posts that go out every day. There's kind of like a 3-step evolutionary process that happens. So when we say strategy, what we mean is kind of like that big idea, that overarching thought. Really all the strategy does is answer your question, what? What is it that we are trying to do? What is that, that game-changing idea? But just having that idea doesn't really do anything, right? So that's why we introduce plans. So that's what we're going to talk about here today, is how to make that plan happen. When we talk about a plan, it's essentially how do you establish your patterns? How do you set your rhythms? How do you know where to be? So it kind of just starts to set, you take that strategy, which is I want to get from here to here. Plan is kind of like a roadmap of how you're getting there. And then your tactics are kind of those low-level executions. So if we're sticking with that like road trip theme, the tactics are like we'll get in the car, we'll fill it up with gas, we'll drive 80 miles an hour down I-95 for 4 minutes, and then we'll sit in traffic forever. But it's the how. It's the how are we getting there? What are those executions that need to happen? And so I just wanted to start with that as like a really high level. So when we talk about strategies and plans and tactics, we've kind of already talked a little bit about strategic thought. This one we'll cover with planning, and then the look ahead to session 7 is the more tactical approach. So this is kind of like a three-pronged presentation. So without further ado, I guess we'll start diving into that 4-step plan. It's called the 4-step plan, but essentially you're just answering 4 questions, and the answers to those questions give you your plan. It sounds super simple because it kind of is.
Yeah.
Do you want to start us off with question 1?
Yeah. So the most important thing, and we talked about this, I think, in our very first session, is who am I trying to reach? And so that is your audience. You probably go back and find that template and start asking yourself those questions. But where are they on social? How do they interact with social? How old are they? Do you know that they're going to be on those platforms? How are your competitors trying to reach them? This is when you can kind of start going and digging into all of your competitors' platforms and see where they are and how successful they are. And in a way, kind of understand if it's worth it for you to be there. You can almost gauge sometimes by what they're doing, and assuming it's good quality. I think sometimes it's very easy to spot when your competitors are probably not up to snuff, but if you see somebody whose their content is looking fabulous and maybe they're still not really getting much traction, maybe that's not where they need to be.
Yeah.
All of this to say that the more specific you can be with who it is that you're talking to, the better. And so again, it's not just... because Catherine popped up, I'm going to say, I'm not just trying to reach engineers. Maybe I'm trying to reach engineers in this specific department, or I'm trying to reach electrical engineers, or I'm trying to reach sourcing people in engineering offices. So the more narrowed down you can be, the better off that you are.
Yeah, and if you need help identifying that too, like that is something that you could bring to your higher-ups, or again, if you're in an agency, like bring that to your client to help narrow it down. That information is out there, and those people are on social. It's just kind of like narrowing in a little bit. So it's the work smarter, not harder approach. Okay, question number 2. This is the one that I overlooked, like personally, so often making plans. I think a lot of people overlook it as well, but it's a really basic question. What resources do I have, right? What am I capable of doing? It's things like your budget, your workload, and your capacity. Your capabilities, like what is your skill set? Are you naturally a good writer, but maybe graphic design isn't something that brings you joy or comes easily to you? Video, same thing. Just, it's hard to take an objective look at yourself, especially in a social role where we're doing all sorts of different like creative endeavors and tasked with so many different ways to create. But you have to take a look and kind of see like, where am I strong? Where am I weak? Obviously, we always want to be growing and developing, so like working on those weaknesses and improving those strengths. But when we're talking about a plan, think about it as like what is it that we can actually do? So just honestly, just like pull up a Word doc, make a list of things. Like think of every step in your social process, your creative process. What am I good at? What am I not good at? Things you're not good at, like how can you improve? What can you lean on? And yeah, so another way to think of this question is, what can we do? I could talk forever about this question, but I don't know if advertising is part of your strategy, but you don't have an ad budget, it's not something that you could feasibly do. If creating, I don't know, a series of documentary videos is something that you think would be and it probably would be a good thing to do in your plan. But if you don't have the time to do it, you don't have the budget to hire a video crew. We know some people that can do that. They're pretty good. But it just kind of qualifies everything that you think that you'd want to do in your plan. I'll stop rambling.
Awesome. You're not rambling. You're doing great. The third question is, what does success look like? So, it's important to know with the things with who you're talking to and the resources that you have, what are you trying to make happen? If you take a step back and see that things are working, how are you going to know that? Again, being specific here is pretty key. you have to make these goals achievable. I'm sure that we've all heard the SMART goals acronym. I will never remember it on camera because,
specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely.
Thank you. And so that can kind of be a little bit of a blueprint to see how specific you're getting there, and to kind of see how measurable you're going to be. Also consider what's happening in your organization. So if you are unable to get something through because somebody doesn't have time to review, or somebody like you have a backed up post queue, for instance, which can happen to us for our own marketing sometimes. Those could be barriers to success. And so how can you break those down? Yeah.
No, that's a good one. And I love talking about the internal processes here too, because again, we talk about success and we always think external. What is the result? How does it affect like the revenue? How does it impact the bottom line? But in order to achieve that, sometimes we have to make adjustments to our own processes. Like Jen said, how do we avoid bottlenecks? Do we have the right people in place? Do we have the right systems set up? And all of that's, it's tough to answer. Like you have to be really objective, and it is something that's a little bit easier for someone like outside to say like, oh yeah, that's broken. I can see that, but sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees.
Right,
so.
Right. I was going to start talking about qualitative and quantitative stuff, but I think I was going to step on your toes for the fourth one.
Yeah, no, but I think this is a good, so if we want to stay on that too, what does success look like could be more of the qualitative data. So like we're getting in front of the right people. And then question 4 is how do we measure success, which is the more quantitative approach, which is essentially when you're setting your objectives, you want to be able to track and measure them. So just assigning some sort of numerical goal with each of your objectives. What does success look like numerically? We talked about reporting and data a few sessions ago. Catherine's using that template that we provided, which is awesome, super helpful when you're tracking this and putting this plan together. But yeah, it's I have my note in here too, which is remember that measurements are more than just numerical data. So that's why question 3 is really important from the qualitative side. Are we getting positive interactions? Are people sharing this? I don't know, do our team members come in every day and say like, hey, I love what we're doing on social? Like that's something that doesn't show up on a report, but it's still good data. It's great information to have.
Yeah, something that happens to us a lot is in new business meetings or even just in interactions on the street, there's so many people that will say, we saw this at what you're doing. We saw you post about this. We heard you talking about this. And these are people that aren't necessarily liking or engaging with our content, which is interesting. Yeah. I wish that they would kind of like, just hit like. It's not that hard. But it's fine because we know like through that qualitative data, quantitative. The feely one, that one. We know through that they're seeing it and they're enjoying it, and in some cases it's the thing that's making them make that decision to come and work with us or come and talk with us or take a tour or whatever it might be. So
yeah, and gathering that information is very simple. It's just asking like, hey, have you seen our social and what do you think of it? It's not a formal survey or report. It's just asking people in your organization questions. So yeah, I think it's a good process to add into. It's a little bit of a weird one, especially if you're like on an internal social team and you're already asking people like, hey, remember to send me pictures of this meeting offsite, or remember to, I don't know, submit a costume for whatever our contest is. You already have that channel of communication open. You can ask them for help and feedback too. So, okay, so those are our 4 questions. And then there's kind of you have your answers kind of put together for each of those, and it's you kind of looking at it and you're kind of thinking, now what? But so just to simplify, really, what you've just done throughout that process is you have identified your audience. You've used maybe that persona worksheet that I think it was our first session. We made that persona worksheet. You have that in front of you. Maybe you have several of them. You know your abilities and your capabilities, like what you could actually feasibly do in a plan. You've outlined your objectives. You've outlined your metrics to measure said objectives. So you kind of have covered like the 4 main columns of any good social plan, and you've only done it by answering 4 questions. And there's a 5th question that you need to answer that kind of ties everything together. It is kind of it's a run-on sentence. Like I know that. I know it's killing your grammar heart to see this one. But the question is, what can I do to reach my audience and achieve my objectives defined by my metrics? So you kind of take that long question. The answer to that question is your plan. It does not have to be this huge, like, ugly, disgusting stack of papers that you've spent way too much time on. It can be just a few sentences of, we want to reach, we want to reach 35-year-old males on Facebook through, I'm rambling now, but like through case studies, storytelling. Like that is a plan. Like that is, it doesn't have to be more complex and complicated than that. So yeah.
But
so then,
also, I think it's not a bad idea you have to do that work at some point. You have to know the competitors. You have to know what post types are going to work. You have to know what platforms make the most sense. But if you're presenting this to clients, you don't necessarily need to show them every single bit of the work that you've done.
Yeah.
It's good to be able to be prepared to answer those questions and speak to them. And those are all the things that are just going to make you an intelligent content marketer. But they've hired you because they don't want you to get into the details. They don't want you to get into the weeds. They want you to know that you have done that work. They want to use your expertise for that reason. Know the things, but don't necessarily dump the things.
That's a good qualifier. So the work, the research, that it happens when you're answering those questions, but I guess it's really when you're presenting those plans, the only information that needs to be in those plans are the answers to the questions. Everything else, it's the iceberg, everything else below the surface, all the work that you did to come up with that, can stick with you, can stay internally, like on your side of the team, but it doesn't have to go to any stakeholders.
And I realize too, I'm speaking as somebody who, has the agency background, but this is also true for an internal organization and the people who, you're reporting to.
Definitely. I think I'd say even more so. Like their time is,
more valuable,
your higher ups' time is more precious. Like they need to be able to work through meetings efficiently. Maybe they don't have the luxury of bringing in an agency team to lean on and supply all of that
internal team. Exactly right. So
okay, so we talked about this 4-step plan. If we're thinking about that 3-step strategy evolution, we took a strategy, what we want to happen. We took a plan, how to make it happen. Last step is kind of that tactical, like what are the actual, I guess it's really the how, like how do you make things happen day over day, week over week, month over month to achieve those goals. And that is what we're going to cover in our next session. And I know, Jen, this is like you're kind of like the queen of content planning.
Try to be. But and so we've talked about in previous sessions too, those 4 simple categories or buckets. It depends, so many people have different names for them, pillars, buckets, whatever. There's 4 simple ones that you can use to really break down how you can make a fully well-rounded social media strategy, especially. Planning calendars, how you can actually take those 4 things and put them into a calendar in a way that helps you plan, helps you see variety, and just kind of keeps you ready to go and inspired when you feel those moments that this could be a grind. And really what that's designed to do is be able to give you more clarity and take away the barriers and help you be more creative. How you can review and approve calendars too. We use several different tools that make it easy for us to review internally and then also send it out to clients to review and approve as well. And then content creation processes. What would you say about that one?
Yeah, it's really just the minutia of how we bring the buckets onto the calendar. It's just kind of bringing it all together to show like a timeline, a sequence of events. So we'll get into like nitty gritty tactical work in session 7. It's one that I'm excited about because I feel like
it's like the meat of it. That's like where it comes to life.
Yeah, it's rubber hits the road there, and this is the part that we've figured out the 4-step plan, but I think this is the one that like you and I have made like so much progress on like over our career, just to make things like super efficient without removing the creative like that creative flow.
And I would say probably one of the best things, maybe you can speak differently, but to me, one of the best things that we did was get content calendars out of Excel or a Google Sheet-like thing. We still kind of have a Google Sheet-like thing, but it's a much more dynamic and it's much more flexible. It just, in a Google Sheet or a Google Doc, like that's one of those things you're trying to move around dates or like, hey, I want this on a different date. And it just completely wrecks your process and creativity because now you have to fix columns and drag photos around and all kinds of stuff. But
it's
so
ugly.
About that.
It's just ugly too. It's just not fun to look at.
Hard to look at.
There's something about being inside a spreadsheet that just stifles a lot of creativity.
Sometimes.
So we have it's basically a fancier spreadsheet, but it's has a lot of automation. There's a lot of I don't know, it's just much more dynamic. Yeah, it's great.
Make it work for you.
I'm thinking it's also, I think it's free too. So I wonder if we could share, I'm thinking out loud, but maybe I'll share a template to one that we use.
Fun.
Yeah,
Love
for
that.
everyone.
That's a great
so
idea.
That could be cool.
I'm gonna make a note.
Okay. And that is all we have for session 6. I loved doing this one a lot. I've enjoyed doing all of them, but this one I'm like feeling super proud of just because it's the result of half a decade of work.
Yeah, for real. But one thing too, before we get into Q&A, so think about any questions that you might have, but Kyle has a great video that he is going to share in the follow-up email. Sorry if I stepped on your toes by sending it too early. But we've, part of this too, and part of developing how we think about content involves a lot of research and a lot of thinking and thought leadership that, we are not the thought leaders there, but finding other thought leaders and using their intelligent minds to inform our process. So he's going to send out a really great video about strategy later. So make sure you look for that follow-up email and watch that video.
Yeah, I have this video bookmarked. Like, it's my favorite one to watch and also to look at. Like, we've actually used it internally as like, okay, can we shoot stuff that looks like this and has the impact like this too? So it's it's a good one.
And also in those moments of existential crisis where you're like, do I even know what strategy is? It's a good refresher.
That's why I have it. That's why I have it. Like, every time we start with a new client, I'm like, why, who hired me? Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'll watch that and I'll be like, oh, okay. Yeah, no,
makes
I know.
sense.
Okay,
Great.
cool. Q&A. Any questions anyone has, feel free to pop your camera on, send a question through the chat. Hannah will make sure that we get it. And then we will stand here in awkward
And wish we had
silence
elevator music.
for a couple minutes, probably. We must have been really thorough.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Do we have all of the resources, the persona planning, the templates for reporting and all of that in one easy to access place?
We should.
We should. And if we don't,
I'll
we'll get them there.
make a page on our site and put those on there.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll do that. That's a good idea.
I love that.
We're still figuring this thing out.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on this journey with us. We're also launching a new website soon, so that will be where the things will live.
Yeah, it'll reflect who we are a little bit better too.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. We'll give it like maybe another few seconds. I see something, but I can't read it.
I can only see the first part.
Yeah, it's a thing for sure.
Yeah, read this out. So love that you all covered paralysis by analysis. I think social media especially, we can overanalyze and stall ourselves rather than just diving in. Yeah.
Yeah. This is like, people will come up to me who like know that I work in social, and they're like, hey, like I have this really, like, I have so many good ideas. I'm like worried about the quality, or I'm worried about like getting the voice right or the tone, or maybe I can't do this. And I always have to like tell them, like, you need to be doing something. Like, something is better than nothing, for sure. Always, always, always. And it is all just an experiment. It's a game of chess, but the pieces are constantly changing, and also the board is moving, and they're flipping it upside down constantly. So there's no such thing as like a tried and true equation for every social strategy. Like, it's just, it always changes. Like, that's the biggest thing that I think people in social, the biggest skill is just the ability to adapt and to understand, like, oh, what does it mean to adapt? How do I make it happen? Paralysis by analysis is what that giant document was. It's basically like, we've done all this work, but we have no idea what to do with it and how to move forward.
Yeah. And I think to kind of go along with that, especially when, maybe your company has never really done much with social before, or you're starting a fairly new company, which is kind of something that we went through, and it had been around for a while, but kind of starting off from where we are today, you have the opportunity to start something new and experiment a little bit, and you're never really going to know what works unless you get things out there and can try. And it's okay to try some things and they don't work. Then it doesn't work. And use that time to establish who you are and what you look like on social and how you sound on social. And you're not going to do that unless you try.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome.
Cool.
I'm going to make a request, I guess, for anyone who's in here. Tell your people about this. Like, I think this is a fun thing. We enjoy doing this. It's something that I wish that, I don't know, we had years ago just to help. There's no like formal training on like the best way to do social. So this is limited to our experience and our views. But at least it's a start. Like, at least it's a foundation to get going.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see, I don't know, some more, just hear feedback. Like, what can we do better? Would you like other people to join this? So that's my bold request.
And another thing too, this will remain free for the foreseeable future. I think we made that decision that there's, this is something that we would love to just welcome as many people into as possible. And you can always go back and see previous sessions too, which I believe we link to every newsletter. So even if they can't join us for the future, at least maybe they can watch some recordings.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone who joined us. I hope you have a great rest of your day. We will see you for session 7. We're actually going to do it at the end of November. So we'll do 2 sessions in November. And then we won't do one in December because we
Christmas.
have the best time off structure where we have the last 2 weeks of December off. So we'll do 2 in November, none in December, and then we'll pick back up in the new year. So
And nobody wants to be, y'all
won't
have
join
things to do to
anyways,
close
yeah.
out the year. So, relax.
yeah, awesome. Well, thanks guys. Have a good rest of your day. Appreciate you for joining us.
Thank you.